I think we have a really strong attendance already, but, and more people may join in the next few minutes, but for, respect those who came in on time. So let's get started. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me at this launch of the book. I guess I really appreciate your making the time, and it means a lot to me. And, it's your presence obviously makes it special. And I also have three special individuals on the session who I respect a lot for who they are, not just also for what they have accomplished. So just a quick round of introduction. So Nitin, as you know, is the Chief Operating Officer of Unilever Worldwide. He's someone I've known for more than 30 years now, a good friend. He was actually my guide when I started my management training at Hindustan Lever many years ago. And all I can say is that I think his career trajectory has been nothing short of what any of us would have bet, even in those early days. So, I mean, he's a great combination of, clarity of mind and passion, coupled with strong values and a lot of humility. So that's Nitin. Sanjay was the chairman of American Express in India till he found his calling to actually help the underprivileged youth to acquire sort of English skills to become more employable. And his social enterprise English Helper has touched more than 10 million lives and counting. So huge impact. And wherever he goes, I know, all his colleagues, he's revered by them for his intellect, for his remarkable people skills, authenticity, and a large, generous heart. And Ravi, again, many of you, I'm sure, not, or if not all, know, was the chairman of Microsoft in India, and has held actually very many senior leadership roles in corporate India. And lately, he's founded this interesting venture called GAME, which is an alliance of mass entrepreneurship, his new sort of pet project. And I just learned that he's actually his new book is coming out as well in the next few months, titled "What the Heck Do I Do with My Life?" So sounds really intriguing and interesting. And I've known of Ravi always as someone with great vision and, a lot of drive and tremendous focus on people and a lot of thoughtfulness. So I'm really excited to have these individuals, and I'm hoping it's going to be an interesting 1 hour ahead. And I do want to mention that we like to wrap it up somewhere around 8 p.m. India time, just to keep it short for all of you. And then, yeah, with that, I'm going to hand over to Sanjay, who's kindly agreed to kind of run the show this evening and, lead the conversation. So over to you.
Hey, Rajiv, thank you very much. And a very good day to folks, I guess, all around the world. Firstly, this event is to be part of this event is a real privilege and joy. In many ways, this is very personal for me. It was about 15 years ago that I had these demons within me. I was in my late 40s, and I got talking with Rajiv. And we worked together for 6 months, and Rajiv helped me, pull the truth out of myself. And I think he made me look inside. And I think what you've gifted me, Rajiv, is probably one of the finest decades of my life. So I owe you a debt of gratitude. With that said, we're going to kick this show off. Before I begin, just housekeeping. I see the chat is pretty active and busy, so I was going to suggest people use the chat for comments and questions. I don't think I have to do that. Everybody's on it. Let's begin with you, Rajiv. Talk to us about the meaning of inside out leadership. And can you, as part of your comments, can you also read a few lines from the book that underscore the key message that you're trying to convey? Over to you.
Thanks, Sanjay. So yeah, I would say the key premise of the book, or this whole idea, is that at leadership positions, you cannot differentiate between professional effectiveness and personal effectiveness. who you are begins to come through very quickly, right? I mean, it happens at all levels, but in leadership positions, you're in the spotlight and hence very visible, and it gets amplified. So whether you are courageous or insecure, whether you are trustworthy or manipulative, whether you are aggressive type or the permissive type. So if you want to be a greater leader, you have to be willing to invest in reforming your inner being, on working on your inner self, and embark on what I call in the book, the journey of personal mastery, which, because it's the extent of the self work that you do and the inner transformation that you experience, which actually dictates the kind of external leadership you display. So that's kind of the central premise. And maybe I am going to read maybe just a paragraph, right? So those of you tuning in, if you have a copy of my book already, I know people on the panel have, so here is the book. So if those at home want to open it on page 26, I'm just going to quickly read this paragraph, which is kind of, again, an essence of Inside Out leadership. And it says, Inside Out leadership is not about mastering professional skills alone, but about becoming deeply aware of who you are, about the direction you want your life to steer in, and about relating to a higher purpose in your professional pursuits. It's not about winning the battles of business or winning the next big deal, normally the greatest preoccupation of business leaders, but it's about winning the battles of your mind. It's about reforming our traits of greed, envy, anger, insecurity, and judgment, and replacing them with authenticity, wholesomeness, generosity, resilience, and compassion. The Inside Out approach is not about reaching a specific business or personal goal, but about a path of personal growth that we choose to embark on. It's about raising your level of self-awareness, living in alignment with your values, clarifying your life's purpose, and taking responsibility for your thoughts and actions. And in that way, it's about working towards gaining personal mastery. And I've seen it time and again, those who embark on this path not only become, better professionals, greater leaders, but it also directly contributes to deeper relationships, greater sense of happiness, fulfillment, and balance. So that's kind of the central premise of what this book is all about.
Rajiv, I love the deliberate emphasis that you have on choose, because it's quite simple. We all know that when we make our choices, we own those choices and we are accountable for them. And I think that's pretty critical when you're making the choices that you refer to in the book. So with that, I'm going to switch the spotlight to Nitin. Nitin, from reading the book, what are your favorite couple of insights that you want to talk about?
Thanks, Sanjay, and thanks, Rajiv, for having me here. I have to say, it's difficult for me to make a choice of a couple of insights because there is so much about this book which resonates. And essentially the central premise of this book, which is Inside Out leadership, and just what the title says, really speaks to me. But if I had to call out just 2 or 3 areas that particularly resonated with me, was the first one, the power of purpose, and the difference it can make when you find out what really matters to you and you start doing and following some of that. I think the other one which struck me in its way, we all know it, but I think the way Rajiv brings it out really makes a difference, which is that we all go through our life trying to change everyone else. And I think he says that the only person you can change and reform is yourself. And the interesting thing is, the more you do that, you start seeing the world around you and everyone else change, primarily because you've changed. I thought that was quite interesting. And the last but not the least, I think, is his comment about how so many of us can go through life feeling insecure, inconfident, and how do you move from doubt and insecurity to more self-belief, more confidence, more awareness, and get out of this imposter syndrome that many of us live in. So quite a few of these which touched me, and some of these were those.
Thank you, Nitin. Ravi, your comments?
Yeah, sure. But first of all, congratulations, Rajiv, on this accomplishment. it's not easy to write. It's easy to write a book. I think it's really hard to write a good book that people are going to appreciate. And so well done. Yeah, like Nitin said, there's a lot of insights here. In fact, Rajiv has very helpfully even labeled them and devoted a chapter to each. But I won't go to the 16 big insights, but rather say probably two ideas which sort of I think are incredibly important. And the starting premise is one of these, which is leadership, Rajiv says, is a verb, not a noun. It's an act, not a position or a title. And therefore, I believe the conclusion is everyone can be a leader, anyone can be a leader. And I think this is incredibly important in these times. So often, either I or people I'm in conversation with, we bemoan the lack of leadership in the world around us. Globally, there isn't leadership on climate change. And look at the country, it's falling apart. And where's the political leadership? You look within your own organization and there's much to wring your hands about. You look around, the community in which you live, and I think the central problem here is, again, we are conflating leadership with people with position of authority and formal mandate and expecting them to do something about it, which they're not going to do much about. And so I feel that this is a very empowering idea which says, look, if something's bothering you, then step up and start trying to make a dent on on that particular problem. It may or may not be a huge dent, but eventually these things add up. And most of all, I think you feel better about your life. So I think that's one powerful idea which he starts out with. And the second equally important idea is that you emphasize, Rajiv, that leaders are not born, but rather made. Okay, and yeah, maybe one or two people are born with leadership qualities, even though I doubt that very much. But here's a quote which I wrote down. Everyone has a greater self and the ability to discover it. So again, it says that leadership is very much embedded in every human being. And the challenge is simply to go within and discover that and then unleash it. And, I think you elaborate, Rajiv, on how this happens through various sort of team activities. In childhood, it comes about by playing sports or being in little groups, and you learn about empathy and conflict resolution and problem solving. And later on, big things happen to you. Either life throws you into a big challenge or you choose voluntarily a big challenge. And these challenges eventually become crucibles in which your character, your leadership capability is forged. And so, yeah, I think these are two of the most important ideas. And then the 16 for me are more sort of specific ideas that sort of lays out how to go about it. Terrific stuff.
Thank you, Ravi. And Rajiv, I have to echo these comments because you structured the book both comprehensively and in some sense very concisely. So it makes reading easy. It makes imbibing the concepts you're trying to convey very simple in some sense. And I thought about what you've written, and hard to choose areas that specifically stand out. But as I started today's conversation, I said, today is very personal for me. And I think that the whole notion of being able to discover your purpose is very powerful. I think Nitin referred to that. And I think the consequence of that, and I think you titled that Insight from Chasing a Career to Following a Calling. It's hard to do. It may sound a bit not so pragmatic for people, but when you really own your purpose, you can move away from just being, focused on outcomes that are definitions of how a career moves. Look, all of us are from business and from large corporations, and we love goals and metrics. And in what I do that a lot. But I'm telling you, I believe that over the last many years, I found a greater ability to find success and celebrate each day than I had previously. right? The days are tough and they are good, but nevertheless, it's in the doing that quite often generates the joy. I see that the audience is already posting some of their favorite insights. So, and that's pretty good. I'm going to come back to you, Ravi, and I'm going to ask you if you can expand on this whole idea of the journey has to begin from within. Did you get that?
Yeah, I did. Well, again, I think much of this book, that's the central strand. But I want, as I was reading it, particularly earlier today, I was reminded of an old story by Joseph Campbell, the old mythologist. And he talks about, King Arthur. He's getting old, and then he has this epiphany. And he realizes that the kingdom is just a physical manifestation of the king's mind and character. And he realizes as he's grown old and weary, the kingdom has also, lost energy and gone, and there's decline all around, and says, okay, it's probably time for me to move on. And so this idea that your life is a manifestation of what's going on within you is, I think, one of the more powerful ones. And now more lately, Carol Dweck, who has written a lot about the growth mindset, she says the same thing. She says our mindset, our beliefs, who we are inside shapes not only our behavior, but also what happens to us. And in fact, our very capacity for happiness. And so if you want things around you to change, forget other people. If you just want your life to be better and your circumstances to be better, then the change has to start within you, which of course, Gandhiji put very beautifully. I used for the longest time think that Gandhiji meant, well, if you want to fix something, then go start it. Actually, I think it was much deeper. It is that the change has to start with your being, who you are. Right now, Sanjay, there's a little puppy here. She's just about a couple of years old. She's a streetie who adopted us. She's totally out of control, completely out of control, destructive. So out of desperation, 2 weeks ago, we went to a trainer. The trainer was looking at us for a while, for half an hour. And then she says, look, the fault is you. You're contributing to all her behaviors. You have no idea how to relate to her. And so you need the training. And only when you change, will she change. And to me, this is the essence of life. If you want things around you to be better, if you want them to be different, then that change has to start within. And so, in our lives, we perform so many roles, professional, a father, a parent, spouse, a leader in the community. And in all these different roles, I think it's the same, that if you wish for things to be better, not only is, as Nitin said, the only thing you can change is yourself, but it also is the most powerful thing. When your being changes, things tend to settle into a different state. And and there's a lot of unpacking that, Rajiv, you do so well in your book.
Ravi, thank you. And well said. And that the story of your dog has hit home, because we have 2 dogs at home and they can't stand each other, and we're a loving family. But now maybe there's a message I got to take away to the rest of my family. I'm going to switch across to you, Nitin. And can you unpack this whole notion of the power of purpose? And obviously, why is that so important?
How do I start? I think Rajiv in his book quotes, and all of us would have read it anyway. Mark Twain had once said, the 2 most significant days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. Yeah. And frankly, in that line, there is so much truth. Because when you think about it, as human beings, all of us are in search of meaning. All of us are in search of meaning to what we do, who we are. And unfortunately, many of us can go through life without really discovering what we care about, what are we passionate of. And on the other hand, I have had the opportunity to see when people find purpose in what they do, when they find meaning in what they do, and it becomes more than just the task that they're performing, how much changes in themselves, what they bring to the task that they're performing. It no longer remains just a task. It becomes, there's a different energy, a different drive, a different set of juices get generated in you, where the pursuit of what you're doing in itself becomes the result and the joy and the success. It's no longer the outcome which matters. So I've seen that happen. And I've seen the discretionary effort which you put in and you're experiencing the joy. That's why that to me is really why the power of purpose is so important. And in an organizational context, it's true in our lives, but it is true in companies, because most of us get into a job and get into the task of doing what it is. And frankly, we don't tap into 10, 20, 30% of the full potential of the individual, as long as that person sees it as a little contract. I have to get something done for which I'm paid a certain amount. But the moment that same task assumes a different meaning for that, and you're able to link it to what they care about and why it matters to them, when an organizational vision, which we talk about, which has to be collectively inspiring, the moment it becomes individually relatable, then it lives. Then it lives in the hearts and minds of everyone, and then we see magic happen. So whether it's an individual, whether it's an organization, I guess that matters. And it's not easy, and that's why we need people like Rajiv and others who help people go through a journey of finding what matters to them.
Thank you, Nitin. You know, Rajiv began in his introduction, he talked about the work we do in government schools. And I'm often asked, do you think you will be successful? And I don't know how to define that. And then I'm asked, why do you do this? And I said, that's because this is what I want to do. And they ask for, and the ask of me is, what's the one quality that you believe you have displayed over this time of almost a decade? And I say perseverance, because this is my purpose. So, and Nitin, I'm going to stick with you. You in your comments earlier, you had referred to the imposter syndrome. Now, how common is that? How often do you encounter that? And can folks do anything about it when they are beset with this challenge?
You know, it's a little strange. In my early days, I thought it would be something that inflicted people who were at the beginning of the journey, who were pursuing a certain, pursuing success as defined by the world. And as I've had the opportunity to grow in my career and get to where I am, I've discovered today that it has nothing to do with where you are on this ladder. It has something to do with how you are as a person. I probably see, and by the way, I'm not excluded from any of what I say. All of what I talk about are the things that I deal with myself, have dealt with, try to work on, partially successful, and still the rest of it is work in progress. But the way I would say is that I've seen many, many successful people, extremely insecure, continuing to suffer from the imposter syndrome, as we call it. And I have seen it trouble them. I've seen it trouble me at times. And I've seen how this insecurity that you continue to live with at a time when you have seemingly got a lot, the tension that you're trying to hold, internally feeling insecure, externally having to project that you're in control, you know it all, dynamite. It is a source of great tension within you. Yeah. And I don't know why it happens. It probably happens because the more success you get and the models that we've had, we tend to believe that, or let me put it differently. I think we all grow up comparing ourselves with each other, wanting to be better than the other. Every time you got feedback in the organization at the end of the year and somebody tells you something, they also tell you, what are the 3 things you have to get better at? So at all points in time, it is always a reference of what's not good in you and where can you get better at. And I don't think we spend enough time just accepting who you are and building on all the wonderful things that we have. And that's just how, I don't know whether all human beings are wired that way, or sometimes the seemingly the people in this rat race trying to get ahead are wired more that way. But the outcome of all of that is this imposter syndrome. And I have no silver bullet in terms of trying to solve it, other than probably the most difficult thing to do, which is to stop benchmarking, stop comparing yourself with others on every little thing. Yeah, and it goes about you. It goes about how we deal with others, your children, your spouse. It's all about comparing ourselves with each other, and that comparison leads to, inevitably, for every human being, if that's what you do, there will be some things on which you will find yourself short. And if that's the only thing you end up focusing on, it will cause angst and it will cause the insecurity that we deal with.
Thanks, Nitin. It reminds me of one of the most terrifying weeks I spent when I got promoted into what some would say is a reasonably senior role. And I got into this new office, which was larger than what I'd been in before, a few rugs, some art. And I spent the first week terrified. I was thinking morning, noon, night about what would he have done, my predecessor. Luckily for me, a senior leader in the company who was retiring came to say bye to me, said, I know this guy had big shoes, but remember you walked in your shoes and stay wearing them. Because, you got promoted because of who you are. And you're wondering if everyone's dissecting everything that you're doing and analyzing everything that you're doing. Just be yourself. And it was such timely advice that I kept with me week after week after week till, maybe that imposter syndrome fled away. So, Rajiv, what about your comments on this whole notion? You spend a lot of time with a lot of people.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'm just loving listening to all 3 of you. I think it's just fabulous, because so many different contours and variations of the same idea, and it comes alive with real life experiences, right? So, I mean, what I have is also a framework. So I would only add that, to some extent, whether it is looking within or whether it is the purpose, etc. I mean, a lot of it to supplement is really deepening our self-awareness, just becoming more and more aware of ourselves. And it has to be at all levels of our being, right? At the physical level, emotional, mental, spiritual, having an understanding at the physical level of our habits, right? Where do we spend time? Meaningful and important versus urgent and transactional. Right? At the emotional level, having an understanding of, our emotional triggers, what makes us happy and insecure and sad and excited and energized and so forth. At the mental level, having an understanding of our own attitudes and thought patterns and beliefs. I mean, the beliefs are really important because the deep-seated beliefs actually entirely determine what and how we experience life. Right? And then at the spiritual level, having a deeper understanding of who are we at the essence of our being, beyond this physical form, beyond these thoughts and feelings and insecurities and all of that, and connecting with a higher purpose. And one of the things that I find leaders and just in our society we don't do enough of and is crucial is creating time for reflection. Cutting ourselves away from the 24/7 noise and creating those moments of solitude where we are by ourselves every day for a few moments, looking within and becoming kind of a self-observer, right? Because that's when we begin to even notice these things, that I'm feeling insecure, or I'm being envious, or I'm being a perfectionist, or whatever it is, right? That's how we begin to notice our recurring patterns and so forth. And that's when we can begin to start to reform ourselves. So I think deepening the self-awareness and finding a healthy reflective practice, I would say, are quite crucial for our emotional and mental well-being.
Yep, I think I'll take away that whole the notion of reflection, because I think that gets probably neglected the most in our lives. It's the hardest thing to sort of build a practice and a habit around. So thanks for calling that out. Nitin, we're going to move to some ways of thinking about how to. So, ideas are great and ideas are probably easy. The question for you is, in real life, what comes in the way of pursuing these ideas and making them come alive?
Again, I wish I had a simple answer. I don't know whether there is any one reason that I can think of, but probably 3 or 4 things strike me. First, probably we live with certain, what I think, and I could be wrong, maybe being judgmental here, but misguided beliefs. Misguided beliefs that the pursuit of what we currently are doing, which is success as defined by the world, is what will give us happiness. Because at the end of it all, we all want happiness. I don't think there's anyone who would say that he or she is doing things to become unhappy. We all want to maximize our happiness. But we have a belief as to what will give you happiness. Yeah. And I don't think we stop often enough to ask ourselves the question whether this belief is founded in some substance, in some reality. Is there evidence to show that the more successful you become, the happier you are? Yeah. And probably that leads to us doing things and not taking the time to pause, to reflect. And I think Rajiv said it. I don't think we, as people, we get so caught up in the everyday action. We are going from one activity to the other without spending time for reflection. And I think that is the biggest danger that all of us spend. We don't spend time to reflect. And probably a third thing that happens is, I think the more senior you become, or maybe it's a mix of a few things. I think we all also have some rigid views of how leaders should be. We might have seen people in our younger days when we had a certain style, a persona, a leadership approach, and we assume that is it. We mold ourselves in that manner. It might have been right 30 years ago, but it might be absolutely incorrect and wrong today. The inability to show vulnerability, the inability to seek help, the inability to say you're wrong, all of these things just prevent us from doing what is required. We also get very senior and you think you need to know it all and therefore you can't seek help. And the analogy that worked best for me was when I linked it to a sporting analogy. Let's assume we want to make the change and the reformation in ourselves, because that's when we change ourselves, we can change others and impact others and have a bigger impact on everyone else. But that's hard work. That's not easy. And we need help. And unlike sports people, in fact, the better a sportsman you are when you're at the top of the world and top of the game, you have more people helping you on different aspects than when you're a novice, when you might have one guy who's able to deal with everything. Unfortunately, as we become senior leaders, we think we know it all and we've got other people to teach, and little recognizing that we probably need to spend time working on ourselves a lot more. And that could be a reason. And last but not the least, let's face it, it's hard work. And it's hard work to rewire or to unwire old beliefs that you've got and replace them with new ones. And it requires a certain degree of conviction, belief, staying the course, and not everyone has the time or energy to do it. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's really what strikes me.
Ravi, do you want to add with some personal stories of challenges that you may have faced and how you've overcome them?
So how much time do we have, Rajiv? No, the thing I would say about challenges is, look, it's an essential part of life, right? If you're living, then there's bound to be challenges, and some of them can be very severe. I think fairly soon in life, you start encountering setbacks and disappointment and failure. And I've certainly had a reasonable share of it, even though I feel lucky. The question, I think the thing is to train yourself when you're in a situation which isn't going well, challenging. To ask yourself two questions, right? Which is, one, how have I contributed to this circumstance? And this, that's not something that most of us ask, because you immediately want to either solve it to get out of it or to pin responsibility on someone else. So, and second question is, what am I supposed to learn from this so that I can course correct and move on? And yeah, so I find that that's a constructive way of dealing with challenges. The principal challenge, actually, for at least for me, is actually the ego, the sense of I, me, mine, because that ego is what causes me in these situations to become reactive. And so I find myself either becoming angry or dejected, or else I become defensive. I want to find somebody else to pin blame on rather than taking personal responsibility. So if you ask me about the real challenge in life for me, it's trying to gradually whittle away at that ego rather than the specifics. But I want to go back, actually, Sanjay, to Nitin's starting comment, which is about this confusion between success and happiness. I think that's a very, very, very crucial point. Do I have permission?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. So look, I think for a lot of people, particularly those of us who of the kind listening in, success is an important driver of satisfaction and happiness, at least in the first part of life. Okay? And I thought a lot about why this is so, and I've concluded it's a lot because of the conditioning, right? Right from childhood, parents, teachers, whatever. They reward you when you do what they want, and they punish you when you don't do what they want. So you get into this mode of pleasing. Hoping my dog also gets into that habit, but not yet. And then you join some organization, your manager does the same thing. And so, for most of my life, I was on this little treadmill where it says my theory of happiness is just work hard and achieve things, and achievement leads to success, and that brings all kinds of rewards, and that's what makes me happy. But at some point, and for many people, I think this is in their mid-40s, when you begin to realize this isn't working. There are many problems with this hypothesis that success leads to happiness. And I think this is really, really, really important. And I realize some way that success becomes like a drug, and you need bigger and bigger fixes to achieve the same level of gratification. And even that gratification, the hit, is very temporary. Okay, it wears off, and then it's, okay, what's next? And so you're on what is psychologists call and you'll know this, Rajiv, the hedonic treadmill. And you're running faster and faster like a hamster to just keep up. And there's only one way to deal with it, which is jump off, which if you're smart, you eventually will. You and I did. I don't know, Nitin, if you're off or not. But yeah, so that's kind of one thing. The second thing, which I think is really important point, is that success, that happiness and unhappiness or misery have nothing to do with what actually is happening in your life. right? So there's this term that I read, which is called they're both synthetic in the sense that they have emotions manufactured by your mind. And you can have everything and be unhappy, and you can have nothing and be delirious with joy. I suppose we all know people in both buckets. And so the trick, if you want, in happiness is actually to work on the mind. And the real challenge I found with success is not pursuing success, but rather living by somebody else's definition of success. There's nothing wrong with success if it's your own definition, okay? There's everything problematic about it if, as Nitin said, you're living by somebody else's definition of what it is you're supposed to be doing and so forth. And as you get older, I think it's really, really, really central to begin to redefine that in your own terms, on your own terms.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. I am going to turn to Rajiv. Unless, Nitin, you have any additional comments, I'm going to turn to Rajiv to pick up from where Ravi left in this whole notion of success and happiness, and from your experience working with leaders and folks around the world, what works?
Yeah. I think, I think a lot has been said and very sort of pointed, sharp, good comments already. So not that much to add, but I would say that I think, one of the things we all fall into trap of, and something that dictates our life every day, is this sort of subconscious belief of what I call doing, having, and being. Right. So it's the notion that once I can do X, I will have Y, and I will be in a state of Z. So most common example, if only I can work hard and get promoted, I will have more time, money, and flexibility, and I will be happier. Right? We all know that's a mirage. I mean, firstly, how many of us have thought like that at some point, right? If not more often than every, occasionally. So I think the thing is, it's a mirage, right? We know that no sooner than you get promoted, you are, busier than ever before, and you are, soon actually eyeing the next big promotion, right? So you're on this whole trap. And the other thing we are doing is we are putting our happiness on hold, something that we value the most, on hold, and making it conditional to events which are not often in our control. So the only way to rebalance this, or to break the cycle, is to prioritize the state of being that we really value, right? So we want to choose and prioritize to be happy along the journey. One of the things, talking about what I've seen work, I have leaders I work with to actually throw away occasionally their long things to do list, right? We all have this long list, right? So I said, just for the next few weeks, throw away this list and replace it with the list of things to be. Just determine what kind of a person, what kind of a leader do you want to be? You want to be more mindful? Do you want to be more empathetic, more strategic, more empowering? Or at home, you want to be more loving or kind? Whatever are those characteristics that you value, and prioritize those as you walk into the office. Think about, what kind of a person do I want to be today? And if you prioritize the state of being, the doing and having will take care of themselves. So that's a bit of a breaking of the cycle that I've seen work for people. So, but I'll pause here.
Very good. Thank you. I think given time, that this would be a good segue into answering some questions. And I'm looking to see if we have questions on chat. I see one for you, Rajiv, that says that do you recommend Vipassana as a complement, supplement, or helpful add-on along with the tenets of your book, reading through your book?
Yeah, I would put it as part of sort of the reflective practice. So I have personally benefited a lot from mindfulness meditation over the years. But, if someone knows of a meditation technique, whether it's Vipassana, transcendental meditation, these days there are apps, Headspace, Calm, and so forth. I think the most important part is to pick one thing that works for you and stick to it. Because, no point being a trialist and keep trying different things. There are people who find positive affirmations very valuable. 3 to 5 statements that you mentally recall 2-3 times a day. Example, I'm grateful for the life I have. How often are we grateful for the life we have? Or just reminding ourselves things like, I'm complete, whole, and enough the way I am and where I am. We talked about the imposter syndrome and, all of the insecurities and all of that. The fact is, we can pursue success, but the reason success is so stressful is because we are coming from a place of inadequacy. We are coming from a place of incompleteness. I am not enough. Only when I achieve this success will I be enough. As against that, if we can remind ourselves every day that I am complete, whole, and enough where I am, then I will pursue that success with joy, with new vigor, with excitement, because it's not going to fill in the blanks for me, but it's because I'll want to, help people or whatever I choose to do in whichever way I want to contribute. So there are many techniques out there. Some people like to write a journal, again, reflective. So every night you write your recurring thoughts and feelings. Some people do visualization, pranayam. There are multiple ways. So no one silver bullet, but whatever works for you. I think creating regular time towards these things on a daily basis, I would say, is crucial.
Yeah, there is no shortcut. There are no shortcuts. I think I heard Nitin and Ravi talk about requires a lot of effort and hard work to move the needle. So I don't have this. Sorry, Ravi, go ahead.
I wanted to, if there is time, just add a couple of things. Look, I've been sort of completely consumed by the pursuit of happiness for at least 25 years, mostly because I wasn't very happy. Okay, so this fear and then you realize the more you pursue it, the more it runs away. And I think that at least for me, Vipassana actually made a profound difference. This morning, it turns out, the booking reopened for the center. Since all the centers were closed for 1.5 years, there's a great supply-demand gap. So when the center opens up a meditation slot, it's gone within 1 hour. It's like some football tickets or something. So this morning I set the alarm at 5 a.m. and by 5:15 I was in. But my point is, you can do a lot of the practices that Rajiv talked about, and I think they're all helpful. But there's something about committing to some, and going very, very deep. Because the trick here is to be able to not live in your thoughts and not, get attached to your thoughts, but to watch the thoughts just play out like clouds. And that takes just years and years of a disciplined practice. And Vipassana is one good thing. The second thing I want to add before I keep quiet is, you can only be happy when you lose yourself in something else. And that something else can be anything. You can lose yourself in a game. You can, playing tennis, or like you were this morning, or chess, or an instrument. You can lose yourself in love. You can lose yourself in your work or mission or whatever it is. But only when you lose yourself, does your mind stop thinking about me? And so I find that for me is really important for being at peace, happy, joyous, etc. So find lots of things, or at least a few things, in which you can completely subsume your mind.
Thank you, Ravi. The only thing I would disagree with you on is that I lost myself in tennis, but it didn't make me happy at all, because my body and my mind are not coordinated no more. But I think I get there, man. I think I get the point. Rajiv, I think this might be something you want to. I'm just looking at the questions, and this you've touched upon in the book. I recall. Do you think one of the major issues is most of us subsume our self-identity to our role identities at different points of time, which are all transient?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Great point. Whosoever picked that up. Absolutely. I think, for the biggest part, I think the issue is for working professionals, particularly, is that work takes that identity. And the thing is, all achievement-oriented people like to measure stuff, right? I mean, even if they are playing golf, they want to measure their progress, right? And so forth. So the thing is that work offers that opportunity for you to measure progress very conveniently, right? Because you can have appraisals, you can see promotions, you can see bonus, etc., etc. But you're not measuring other aspects of your life enough? Do we measure? What's the measure for the quality of love you have with your spouse? Where's the measure for the love you enjoy with your children? Where's the measure of the kindness that you display in your life? There is no measure. And as a result, what happens to achievement-oriented people often is they gravitate towards work, succeeding in work, and that becomes the identity. And then obviously any ups and downs at work are going to play emotional havoc in our life, right? Because that's the only thing we believe we are. So, and that's where I think the spiritual practice of trying to understand who are we at the essence of our being, not just the physical form, but beyond that, the thoughts, beyond that, the feelings, and beyond that, the everlasting awareness, right? Once we start connecting with that, it's like, to the point of, to Ravi's point of losing ourselves. So here's the thing. It's like, what I really sort of comment on this is, do whatever you're doing as if that's the only thing that matters, right? Do whatever you're doing, believing that that's the only thing that matters, but knowing all along that nothing matters. So having the passion for what you're doing, but yet having the detachment to isolate yourself and say, it's okay. I was having fun, so I lost in tennis, but it was a great game. It's okay. It's nice, it was fun. So being able to detach the I, me, mine from that, I think that combination really hard to practice on a daily basis. But again, it's a worthy pursuit.
It reminds me of a time when I was going through some difficulty, and I at that time met with the CEO of our company, and I was sharing my angst with him. And he said, Sanjay, you've got to learn to differentiate between emotion and passion. Emotion will blind you, it will paralyze you, and passion will fuel you. It was difficult for me to fully comprehend what he was saying, but over time and listening to your comments, I think, he did say something quite powerful. Nitin, I have a question coming in, which I think you may want to address, or if Ravi wants to jump in. Folks are saying that our organization, the organization that they work in, really shape a lot of the thinking and behavior, and are the measures of success that organizations are pursuing today consistent with, trying to also help people achieve, a balanced place in society, in their lives, what's the changes companies are making, thinking about how the world's shaping and how people are beginning to think about themselves and their lives.
It's a very broad question, but it is increasingly true that more and more companies are trying to ask the same questions as individuals ask. What's the purpose of being? Why is that company needs to be around? And increasingly, the notion that a company is around simply to maximize shareholder wealth is challenged. The way I think about it is companies have been around because as business has been around from the time it ever started to serve some societal need. And when it served that need, society rewarded that business in the form of profit. So in a way, how it was when it started and how it is today hasn't changed. The purpose of business is still serving the changing societal needs. The outcome of business, of running a good business, is the shareholder wealth which we create. And unfortunately, over many years, I think business had got confused between what its purpose is and what its outcome is. And we kept teaching in business schools that the purpose of business was shareholder wealth maximization. I think that time has changed. And I think we find many companies today talk about what they want to do and why do they want to do it. And we find today in our organization, most people who want to join you because they find an organization which has a purpose beyond the mercenary act of making money. Yeah, that no longer motivates the generation which is growing up. I am still with this company, Unilever, after 30 odd years. because I'm still excited by what we are trying to do, and it's an unfinished job. We want to be the company which would demonstrate that a sustainable company has no disconnect with being a high-performing financially outcome company. And that debate is still on. And we'd like to be the company which shows that there is a model of capitalism which can probably achieve both. And it is tough. And what we find today is that more and more people who join our organization only join us because they're excited at the possibility of finding solutions which can be good for society, good for the planet, and good for business. And it's hard work. So I don't know whether that fully answers your question, but yeah, business needs to find a purpose just as each one of us as individuals needs to find its purpose. And when you do that, I think a business with purpose, as long as it's relevant, will survive and will be relevant to society. Otherwise, it will flounder and die like anything which becomes irrelevant.
Thank you, Nitin. You know, I run a small company, and it's no Unilever or Microsoft. But what enthuses me is the younger today. A lot of very talented people are coming to work with us and staying the course because of what we are trying to do. And they're willing to often trade that off for other benefits. So I think business will have to reshape the way it thinks about its purpose, in a manner of speaking, because that is definitely going to be the push that the new generation will impose upon it. Ravi, any comments?
I think Nitin's right, and companies must change. And bravo to Unilever for being amongst the pioneers and in changing. But as an individual, I think it doesn't really matter. Okay, you need to learn to walk to your own tune, walk your own path, march to your own drumbeat, whatever it is. So even if you're working in Unilever or Microsoft or wherever, it doesn't matter. There will be some dissonance because the organization measures and rewards things a certain way. You have to learn to have that clarity inside you and find purpose for yourself within that framework. And it's not easy, but it is possible. And otherwise, you're forever going to be in that situation where your happiness is determined by some institution or the larger forces over which you have absolutely no control. So I would also put a premium on ourselves as individuals.
Yeah, I think back to the notion of personal mastery. And with that, I think given that we're at the hour just past, one quick check-in with you, Nitin. Any comments that you'd like to make before we close? And I hand over to Rajiv.
Well, my only comment is that I wish I had spoken less. I would have got a chance to hear Ravi, you and Rajiv a little more, because it has been fascinating for me to listen to all of you.
Thank you. Ravi?
Well, Nitin is ever gracious. But no, it's been thoroughly fun to think a little bit more explicitly about this. I don't think I would have read this book as soon as it had come out, had it not been for this opportunity. So thank you, Rajiv, and I wish you all success with this. And it's been fabulous reconnecting with both of you.
Thank you, Ravi. And I think, Rajiv, you're an extraordinary salesperson, because like Ravi says, you made me read this book faster than I might have otherwise. And it's so good that I've already gifted it to a few people and maybe more. So good job. And on a serious note, this is a truly awesome book, and it reflects who you are and what you preach. So thank you for bringing this out and sharing your thoughts and your wisdom so candidly with us. Over to you, my friend.
No, thanks. Thanks, firstly, to all three of you for sharing all those thoughts. And and kind of bringing the ideas of the book alive through your personal experiences and, you know, the nuances of those anecdotes and so forth. So that just makes the conversation rich. And I'm so fortunate to, you know, have all of you at this special event. And I also want to thank all the audience, because, you know, we've had like more than 110 people logging in, and the incredible part, because everyone told me that, you know, people will come and go in these kind of things and so on and so forth, and I understand that, but I think till the very last few minutes, I think you know, other than 3 people, I think, who left, everyone's been around. So that's a testimony to also, you know, all of you. So no, I really enjoyed it, and I do hope more people benefit from you know, reading the messages in this book. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks again to 3 of you, and to every single person who really made it special for me by, you know, tuning in and participating. We are also going to have a recording out in a couple of days, or as soon as possible. So any friends of yours who missed it, you know, feel free to share. But thanks, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.